Hey, Lyla, welcome to Quantum Messages. Thanks for joining the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm so happy you're here and you were able to come on with me today. So, Lyla is a fellow minister with the Center for Sacred Studies, and we are members of the same clan, the Clan of the White Rose. I almost switched it around there. This is exactly what we were talking about, but it's the Clan of the White Rose. And she holds a master's degree in spiritual counseling and depth psychology from the California Institute of Integral Studies. Lyla is an artist, expressive art facilitator, and teacher whose work is deeply rooted in earth honoring ritual, ancestral healing, and Jungian insight. She brings together ancient wisdom and creative expression to explore spaces where the personal meets the collective and the visible meets the unseen. Lyla has had multiple experiences in the unseen realms and has had communication with spirits, both positive and negative. She has stepped into her role as a medium, and today we're going to hear her story about mediumship and what it entails. So, Lyla, tell us your story, starting when you were young, and when did you start having these paranormal experiences?
Well, when I was young, there was instances as a child. So as you build your mediumship, as people build their mediumship, they'll realize, oh, that when I was a child. Oh, that when I was a child. It was more of like a sensing and knowing. So my body is what speaks to me. If my body gets stressed out from a situation, now I understand that I need to get out of there or whatever it is. It's like red alert. And it started that way when I was a child. And of course, you know, most of us weren't brought up in a conducive lifestyle for this type of work. I was born and raised in Eastern Los Angeles, and that wasn't even part of our repertoire, you know, at all. It was more like that stuff is evil. Don't even go there, you know, Ouija boards, this and that. Although I did do Ouija boards as a child. That was my first kind of experiences with spirit, because I did find that it worked. But it was more, I feel like the Ouija boards are more on the dark end, the dark side. And it wasn't till later in life where I was in an abusive relationship where my gifts started to expand. And I went through kind of a spiritual awakening. There was a time where I couldn't even leave my farm. Leaving my farm to even go to the store, I would do it, but I wouldn't really go to social events. It was really challenging. The energies of people started getting really, really intense. And proceeding that around that time, I didn't realize at the time, you know, that I was in an abusive relationship, but I started to crack open. And there was moments that I would find myself, I would say, like being attacked is how I perceived it in the past. And I didn't know what it was. And I was part of many different spiritual paths, but one in particular, Umbanda, there's songs, they're called pontos. And these songs call in these spirits. We didn't know what we were doing. And they were calling in these spirits, and then I would proceed to flop around sometimes, not knowing. And there was even times where I was like speaking through my mouth, not like understanding what was happening. And it was pretty torturous for a very, very long time, to a point where I decided to turn it off. I met my teacher, and I had a retreat center where people would come and we'd do different retreats. And when I met her, I also met the people from the Center from Sacred Studies. I met Jyoti and Darlene and Russ, and I recognized them as wise elders that I was looking for in my life. And one of those elders was a medium, and a medium in Umbanda since a child. And then I started to learn, oh, this is what this is. I didn't know what it was. I mean, I knew what mediumship was, but I didn't really, you don't really, really know. until you experience it. So I began a slow study because she lived really far, and still going through so many processes of what I felt like was getting attacked. And then I turned off my mediumship for over 6 years. When I realized what I needed to do, the first step is to turn off your mediumship. You got to learn how to control it. So that's how I began. I would go into ceremonies where there would be mediumship and not turn it on and hold firm in my seat. And that was the first, and it went on for 6 years until I opened it. And, you know, there's been little bumps in the road here and there, but now I'm understanding the bumps. And yeah, I'm understanding those bumps, and I'm grateful for the bitter and the sweet and all in between because of the lessons.
So when you were a kid, did spirits speak through you when you were a child, or when did that start happening? When they started to like come into you and kind of.
That didn't happen when I was a child. I think it was too, you know, immersed in the city life. Although my family, we weren't abundant financially, but we would go to the forest every summer for weeks on end and go camping. And that's where I built my connection with nature. And when I think it was 27 or 28, when I moved to Hawaii, I fell in love and I moved to Hawaii, and I stayed there for 18, 20 years, because I kept going back even when for long periods of time, even when I moved. So about 20 years of my life. And that's where I met my teachers and such. So I would say it wasn't until I moved to Hawaii and I was doing this work and in that abusive relationship that it started opening up and breaking open. But again, I didn't know what was going on for many years until I met my teachers, and automatically I went, oh. And then still, like, over time, I realized, oh, that experience, and oh, and that experience. And then people will realize too, when they start opening up their mediumship, that their guides, or people, I'll say beings that are with them, they'll start to see that they've been with them since a child. And then as you develop with them, sometimes they need to develop too, to match you. Because when we're in abusive relationships, I found out this later when I was in university. For those of you that don't know, the California Institute of Integral Studies, also known as CIIS, it's an alternative education where we could talk about things like this and it's not taboo. And I took a class, Integration of Expanded States of Consciousness, the best class, by far the best class I took. They were all amazing, but this particular class, I learned that people build their gifts. They expand, like say abusive children that are in abusive households. They'll know before they walk out their bedroom door what the temperature is of the household, or that person, that the abusive parent, they'll know where they're at, and they build these gifts, and it's like it's a coping mechanism. So for me, it started in the abusive relationship, where it wasn't like that, but I started to crack open. And when we crack open, so like from abuse or any kind of, like, it could be drugs, it's like we get these cracks in our auras, right? Or in our system, however you want to look at it. And that darkness that comes in matches the entities that come to us. So if we're in a lower state, we're going to get those lower beings. And that's how I started with lower beings. And it was so hard. I didn't understand how to make it stop. I used to protect myself, like, oh, I'm just trying to put myself in a bubble. That doesn't work. I mean, maybe a little bit, you know, but not really. No, there was a time where I had a being come into me and go out, and come in and go out, and said, you don't have control here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a joke. Like, it was a trickster energy. And it showed me, like, I'll leave, but then look, I'm just going to come right back. And then
Mm-hmm.
until I understood that, oh, this is an inside job.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't an exterior job. I mean, once we have it in the inside, of
Mm-hmm.
course, it branches out to the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And we become firm with God, whatever God is to you, with our guides, with the earth, and with prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is what I teach, what I
Mm-hmm.
help people with, because it's like my passion. I was a former teacher, a former high school teacher, art teacher. And, as I know you were a teacher as well. And for me, I got the students that were like me. The art kids, they were those that needed that expression. So there's a little darkness in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot what I was going to say.
You were talking about how, you started, when you started, you were a teacher, and that, yes, you had these experiences of mediumship, like as a medium, and you didn't realize what was happening. And one question that I had while you were talking was, for a lot of people, well, not a lot, but there are people who've had these experiences. And when you have the experience, it's scary and you don't know what's going on. So what are some examples? Like, what are some of the examples of the experiences that you've had, so that people can be like, oh yeah, like I had that too. Like I'm not alone in this,
Well, there can be like, we'll say like some like kids, right? Some of them hear things. Some of them, like they're invisible friends. Like, to us, they're invisible, but they can see them. Things like that as children. But if they're not nurtured, this is what I'm seeing, and especially right now in the world, with all this turning of the elements of the worlds, of everything's changing, and we are evolving as humans. Our gifts are coming forth, and perhaps like people our age that are already in the spiritual world, we're more equipped. We've got our teachers, we're more equipped to handle this. But the kids, many times, they don't know what's going on. And if their parents aren't able to recognize it, then they turn to teenagers. They can maybe turn to drugs, and then they get lost. And then sometimes, like, kids will go into psychosis. This has been happening a lot lately. I have more experiences and people calling me about psychosis than I've ever even known in my life. I never knew anybody in psychosis as a child. And now it's everywhere. There's so many homeless people on the streets, walking around, talking to themselves. Why are they talking to themselves? They're talking to themselves because there's a being there. And they're probably, most likely, most of them are doing drugs, which lowers their vibration, which causes holes in their aura. So these beings are meeting them. I feel like these people, and the kids too, are gifted humans that have too much trauma, and they need help. And unfortunately, some of them, many of them, most of them, don't want to help. It's too hard. And it happens in teenage years when we start to really develop, but our brain's not fully developed yet. It doesn't develop till we're like in our mid-20s, 100%. So I'm here because I've had to go through this myself at an older age. I didn't go into psychosis, but there was a point where I was right on the edge, and I knew it. I knew I was right on the edge. And thank God I had the tools and the teachers and the spiritual practice to, and my willpower to get out of it. And so there's so many people out there. So like, if people have children that have gone through psychosis, be very careful, be very mindful about how you proceed. That's what I would invite any parent out there that is experiencing this with their children, or if they're seeing things, to get some help. because this is a gifted person that later in life, if nurtured, can really be perhaps our teachers and our guides later. These could be our shamans or elders in the tribes that were recognized when they were children to be the seers. But we don't have that here. And I would also, for those interested, look up the work of Malidoma Somé. He speaks about this. He's now passed. But he has spoken about this. The people in psychosis, he actually took somebody back to his tribe in Burkina Faso that was psychotic and helped him come out of it. And the native tribes all over the world, many of them have practices for this, to nurture these people. So I feel like that we're at a real pivotal point in the world right now, where we have a choice. We have a choice to nurture those who are having spiritual emergence and to move them to the next stage, to help them understand and nurture them, or to end up psychopathology on the streets, talking to themselves in tents, which, we're seeing so much more of that. So as a community, as a nation, as nations all over the world, it's a pivotal point right now. And I really pray that we can help. Even small.
I really understood what you were saying when you were talking about what happened as a teenager. And we've had this discussion before, but for me, I started having paranormal experiences at the age of 15, and they were very scary for me. And I do believe dark entities did come and visit me multiple times. And so, because I started dabbling with witchcraft, I started dabbling with the Santeria, and I started dabbling. I knew people who practiced Satanism. So unfortunately, as a kid, I was like very curious, about these things. And I didn't realize, because I didn't have the foundational base and the elders to help guide me, who would have recognized within me right away that I am, open to all of these things. I didn't have that guidance. And so I went on this deep, long, dark dive into, darkness, like we talked about, and, with the use of drugs and all these other things for about like 10 years. And it was definitely a spiritual emergence for me, and it became almost like a spiritual emergency, because I lost parts of myself, doing that. And I had multiple transcendental experiences and, paranormal experiences. And I didn't know what was happening or why it was happening. And when I talked to people about it, like my friends or maybe some older people, they thought I was crazy, like, oh, you're just crazy. Like, you're into that stuff and like, whatever. So they would kind of dismiss me. So, I really do believe that it's really important to like have the community of people and go back to the more original principles and original ways, like the way we've been taught, and to have those elders that can help guide us, the younger ones. And so I, as a teacher, and as you being a teacher, like I have a passion too for being, a guide for the younger generation. And I too am seeing a lot of kids suffering, and what's happening is they're internalizing right now. So I noticed, because of, technology, so they put on their, like headphones or, whatever. And they're not looking you in the eye anymore. So they're internalizing like everything. And so when that happens, like they're disconnected from nature, they're disconnected from humans. And then, there's this like spiral down psychologically. And then, it opens up doors to dark entity attachments, which I talked about before. And what I'm noticing now online, and, especially with YouTube, is that there's this huge emergence of people coming out channeling. And so what I wanted to ask you, because you have direct experience with this, is that what I feel like there's, first of all, confusion about the difference between channeling and mediumship. And I also feel like people are kind of playing with fire channeling sometimes, because in order to, like you said, do mediumship and have a spirit come through you, whether it's a, extraterrestrial ET, interdimensional being, hyperdimensional being, or spirits of like the land, or your guides, we need to have like a proper space that's set up that is, we have to have a proper, like, we have to be protected energetically. And so I was just wondering if you could speak on that.
Yeah. Well, and as far as everything online and all the people channeling, I don't have a judgment or perspective on what people are doing. I think there's some people out there that are doing amazing work. And I think, channeling and mediumship is one of the same thing. But what I've realized is that online channeling is much more, I would say, easy to watch, because mediumship can be messy, especially at the beginning. And it's the same thing. Mediumship's like the embodiment, right? And channeling's more like the being coming through and speaking through, which in mediumship can happen too. It happens both. Some people some people can do both, and I think they can. As the medium develops, they can do both, and it depends what tradition they come from, or in the Western world there isn't so many traditions, right? So perhaps people are just really learning how to channel, and that's how they do it, and it's more easy on the eye, because I think with mediumship, if it was filmed, it might make people a little nervous. I would say. I'll start there. And in many traditions, the mediumship is not allowed to be filmed. In the traditions that I work, there's no filming, not with the mediumship.
So this goes back into my question about, like, you're following specific protocols that have been passed down for literally like thousands of generations, it seems like, for as long as humanity has been around. And what do you mean by like the embodiment of a mediumship? Like, is somebody flopping around? Are they like voice, like sounds are coming out? Like it's a little bit more primordial, I guess. Yeah. I don't know how to describe it.
And all of the above.
Okay.
All of the above. When a medium's first starting, it could be flopping around. I mean, that's how I was. It was tough, really tough. And I almost wanted to stop my practices, but then it started happening out of the practices. I was in a yoga class once, and it happened right in the middle of a yoga class. Thank God I was at home and nobody saw. And that's when I realized I can't, there's nothing I can do. I need to get a hold of this. I can't stop it. Some people can. People like me, I'm extra sensitive, and I couldn't stop it. There was nothing I could do. The only thing I could do was bring more light into my life, ground myself, work on my spiritual practices. And I think I honestly feel, and this is a perspective of mine, just my own perspective, that people like me that are extremely sensitive, if they don't have the willpower to do the work, they will end up on the street on drugs. And I'll just back up a little bit, like what you were saying as a young person. I had experiences like that too, where darkness got a hold of me because whatever was happening in my life. But one of my gifts is I have a very strong willpower. And so I would go in that cycle, and then I'd recognize what was happening and I would get out of it. But then I would go back and I would get out of it. And when I moved to Hawaii, it was a whole different experience, because I was in the forest, the jungle, in nature every day. And in Hawaii, the reference for spirits of the land and spirits in general are recognized as part of the culture there. And that's the one thing that has stayed pretty much, through colonization. And so that saved me, even though I was going through it, because I was living there when I was really going through my spiritual awakening. And I've had multiple spiritual awakenings. I had another spiritual awakening after I left that partner. And that's when my gifts started to flourish even more. It took a while because I needed to really purify myself. And it's an ongoing thing. It's not like, oh, I'm purified and then I'm done. It's an ongoing process until, as one of our teachers say, until we leave this meat suit. We're going to be doing this work. And humbleness, integrity is so important. And again, none of us are perfect, and we're perfect in our imperfectness, in our imperfection. So it's an ongoing process of illuminating ourselves so we can be stronger, so we can meet our guides. We have in the tradition that I study, we have what I call our gatekeeper. And the gatekeeper is what protects the Ori, the head. And that gatekeeper will protect us from other entities, lower beings coming in. And that is the most important, the first relationship that we need to cultivate. And once we have that, it gets a lot easier. And sometimes, we have to backtrack. I had a moment where I was doing so well. And I thought I was like, maybe I was getting a little high on my horse. And, I'm doing great. And then one day, he let something in. And I didn't understand why at first. And then when I realized, oh, I needed that lesson. He let something in for a lesson that was super hard and something that would come in over and over again. And then I realized, wow, I need to illuminate that being. And that's part of my work. Not everybody's work will be like mine. And that's the thing with mediumship. It's individual. And so it's important to not, judge anybody else's experience and know that we're all unique. We all have our unique gifts, and it takes, lots of time to cultivate. And I'm still cultivating. I'm not saying I'm an expert in anything. I'm not even an expert in myself because I'm still learning, and I will be learning forever. However, I feel that I'm at a place where I can help those that are just starting, that are really having that spiritual awakening. I'm trained in spiritual emergence, and which oftentimes looks like psychosis, or psychosis. Looks a little bit different than a quote psychopathology. But I also think the psychopathology is just somebody gifted with a lot of trauma that really needs to work through the trauma.
Yeah. And I mean, it seems like there's a lot of psychological challenges with the mediumship. And when you're first like kind of waking up to it and into the space, it could be frightening because there's certain different types of spirits that are coming through you. And I have two questions. Well, one of them is like, how do you tell the difference in the flavor between the different types of spirits that are coming through, both positive and negative? Like, what is it how do you know? And then from there, like, how do you mitigate potential psychological disturbances as these spirits are starting to pop in to that person's reality?
Good question. So for me, they feel different. And it's like it's a sensitivity that we all have. It's like that. Okay, so this is a good example for other people because we've all had this. You hear that little voice that's like, don't go there or don't do this. And then you don't listen to it, right? That intuition. Well, it's the same thing with mediumship. I would say that's a form of mediumship. It's our guides talking to us, but it's such a whisper, we don't listen. So once we get quiet and are able to be in silence, those messages come through and we can really understand them. So at the beginning, like they'll come in, they can feel, for me, I get stressed out. They're cold. So the beings from the other worlds, their world is cold. And from me, then I would say the malefic ones come from a cold place. So when I feel they're cold, I'll immediately, I cover my head. This is one thing I do. I cover my head. I cover my back. I call my gatekeeper. A lot of times my gatekeeper comes before I even know what's going on. And So it's a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear them.
Mm-hmm.
But the cold is one of the things. But I can also feel they're like more dense,
Mm-hmm.
and my body just is like this. There's something not right.
Mm-hmm.
So I teach the children I raise, like, if you feel something that's not right, listen to yourself
Mm-hmm.
and follow through. If you feel like you need to get out of there, get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's those subtle things. My first teacher on Big Island, she taught me that. Trust yourself. That's the first step. You got
Mm-hmm.
to trust your intuition, and you got to pay attention. And then sometimes we get the brick in the face because we're not paying attention. That's happened to me many times.
Yep.
and, and then, you either get it or you keep getting the brick in the face.
Yeah.
And it really gets worse.
Yeah.
The brick in the face gets worse and worse until you really pay attention. And, that was me with the relationship, is that everything started getting worse. And it wasn't until I like this analogy, like Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall, broke into a million pieces,
Mm-hmm.
and putting that Humpty Dumpty, which was me, putting it back together took so long.
Mm-hmm.
And also to not beat yourself up for the past, because those experiences that we've had, they were necessary for our person.
Yeah.
But the person next to us maybe doesn't have to have that. Maybe that's not their karma in this lifetime. Maybe they have an easier karma in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not. So to not judge ourselves,
Yeah.
not judge the person next to us, to know that whatever our path is, whatever we went through was necessary. Because
Mm-hmm.
if we look in the past too, then we're gonna just halt our growth. So to really start to pay attention in those ways. Because
Okay.
I'll say too, the benefic spirits,
Yeah, I was going to ask you about
there's
that.
so much light,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so easy, and they flow so beautifully, and you feel energized.
Mm-hmm.
You don't feel like weighed down.
Yeah.
Energized. And then there's the opening and closing, opening and closing. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually, my gatekeeper, one time, because he's a male entity, he was coming and going, and I was like, hey, we're gonna make a deal. Let's sit down. I literally sat down in a chair and I said, give me your hand, your paw, whatever you have. And and we sat down and we made agreements on when he's allowed to come and when he's not allowed to come. And he's followed so far. I mean, there's a little, like, fine tuning here and there, but it's been really good. And again, I'll just go back to that. That is the first relationship to cultivate, and one at a time. So when you're working with so many spirits at once, then it can throw us off.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is again my perspective. People might have other lineages, might have other perspectives, but this is how I've been taught, and my guides have taught me to really just work with one at a time and cultivate that. And then when it's time, then that gatekeeper will let another one in, if that's what's going to happen.
So do all mediums have gatekeepers?
I believe they do. That's my belief. I believe they do. And I believe everybody's a medium. Some are just more sensitive than others in certain ways. So like, I'm sensitive to incorporation. So when the beings like come inside my body, that's tough. It's a really tough, it's a tough thing to do. But I have agreements, like you're only allowed, there's only certain, I'll say like certain ceremonies that you're allowed to like fully incorporate. Otherwise it's like a handshake, or you're standing beside me or behind me, and we can have a conversation. So there's different levels, because when that's a full incorporation, it's not easy on the body. And it's not all the time. It can't be all the time, not for me. And I'll say this, I was chosen. I did not choose this path. It has not been easy for me. And I would say, if you're interested in doing this work, take it very slow. And there may be an interest because you're hearing the call. You also, I think it's also important to check in with oneself and ask, why do I want to do this? what is the intention to get out of it? Because the path of mediumship, of a fully incorporated medium, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And again, it chose me. I would never in a million years think that I would even be at this place in my life. But then here I am. And now I'm coming out to help others because it's time.
Yeah. And I do think because of all, technology and social media and all this stuff that, there's more coming out about channeling and mediumship and all this stuff and spirits. And I don't think people realize if they start getting involved in it by themselves, what they could get themselves, the trouble that they can get themselves into on a deeper internal level and almost like a psychological level, like you were talking about, because where it's like a fine line between the worlds, between it, you're walking in between the veil.
Yes.
Like in the veil and then into this world. Like I always feel like for myself, I'm on a tightrope and one foot is in the unseen, one foot is in this reality. Like I'm always on both ends. And yes, to walk that fine line, it's a very fine line to walk. And what is some advice you would give to people who are, I mean, you kind of already did, like, this is not something you chose, but just to be really mindful of some of the actions that they might be taking.
Well, I would say if you're interested, seek out teachers that resonate with you. It's really important to find teachers that do meet you where you are and will accept you for who you are and everything you're about, and will not make you wrong. Because there is no wrong. We're just going through life and going through our karmas. And I really believe that we all come here with the path and to be who we're supposed to be, to walk that path of the light, whatever that means to us. And that teacher is really important. We can have many teachers. I have many teachers. And I have one that she's my mom. I like to call her my mom. She is my madrina, my mom. And she meets me at that place of understanding and compassion, which I need. I need that for myself. So, and I share my experience because maybe it can like hit a point of light in somebody else that has something similar. Like, yes, and it doesn't feel right. That's not the teacher for you. Because I did that too. I would know, but I want to be here and I want to stay. And it's like, no. It's not a match. They weren't able
brick to the face again.
Yeah, the brick to the face again, and it was not a match. But Lyla wanted it to be a match. It wasn't, and it's not that the other person's wrong either. Nobody's wrong. They're doing great work. It's just it wasn't a match for me and what I needed. And then I found the one that is. Thank God.
Yeah. And that's good. I'm glad. And, you were talking about Umbanda. And also I know that you have knowledge of the Daime traditions of Brazil. Can you speak about those and, the different traditions and maybe, I mean, I was going to say practices, but I know that some of that is, kept quiet and offline, so to speak, but just the traditions.
So Umbanda, there's Umbanda that came from, there's the Candomblé came from Africa, right? The Brazil was one of the last countries to abolish slavery. So there's a lot of African culture in Brazil. And Umbanda came in the early 1900s, actually. It comes from those African traditions. Candomblé is another one too, and sometimes Candomblé and Umbanda they come together in this tradition of working with mediumship. They work with the Orishas, and in other traditions like there's like Lukumi, there's Ifa, Santeria. They have slightly different names, and sometimes it's slightly different, but Umbanda, it's a mediumship. you're calling on the Orishas, you're calling on caboclos, on pretovelhos. The pretovelhos are the old, many times wise slaves from the jungle, and the caboclos are like they're these beings that come from the line of the Orishas, and they're elevated beings, but they're still more close to this earth plane, and I would say maybe in a way more feasible for us to connect with, and they're kind of the bridge for the other worlds. So in that, there's the Santo Daime tradition, the Daime tradition in Brazil, that that is a medicine tradition, and that tradition works with also works with the Orishas in a different way. It's I'll say a Christian based tradition. It's completely legal in Brazil, and they also work with the Orishas, but it's a little bit different. They do different works for different things. So there's and if you wanted to practice your mediumship, you can go to Brazil and work in this tradition. It's really great, I say, for Westerners, because it's not from the jungle. I mean, they do live in the, it is in the jungle, but they're Westerners, and there's different works. So like one work would be concentration, where you sit in meditation and you're not doing mediumship. The mediumship's closed. Then there's celebratory works where there's also the mediumship's closed. And then there's what's called curas. They are healing works, where they work sometimes with the lower beings to illuminate them. It's a work of charity. So the beings come in to be illuminated. Some people do that work. Some people work with caboclos. Some people work with the pretovelhos, and they often do healings. Sometimes they do healings on people. The more, I would say, evolved mediums will do it in that way. And so that's a good place to practice mediumship and turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. In Umbanda, it's on, and they do different works, mainly called giras, and they are, and actually Umbanda's here in the US too. It's a non-medicine. They'll work in the giras, and they're calling on the spirits, and they do healings too. And that's a good place to study here too, because you can go in there and you can even just observe and not be part of the circles. So probably more like in the big cities. I would say like in the small towns, there's probably not that as much.
So what's an Orisha?
The Orishas are these beings. They're from the African traditions. They're beings not in human form. They in Umbanda and in the Daime, they actually relate a lot of times to the Catholic saints, because they had to hide. So the energy of the saints. So there's like, let me think about like Oshun, she's the deity of the fresh waters. They're elemental spirits of nature from the jungles, so like Oshun is from the fresh waters. She's the sweet waters, but also, there's all aspects of her, because think about the rushing river, Oshun can smooth the boulders and refine. She's often holding a mirror, found herself holding a mirror. There's different colors for the Orishas too. And again, in different traditions, they're sometimes a little bit different, and their names are a little bit different. But they're very high. I will say, like, it's very important, because I want to give this, I don't want to call it a warning, but maybe it's a warning.
Yeah, just give the warning. Yeah, It's
Yeah.
important for people to hear.
Yes, because this is what happened for me, is that I was singing their songs called puntos. I was singing these, not knowing that I was calling the beings in.
Mhm.
And if we don't know what we're doing, the beings come. You call them 3 times, they come.
Mhm.
And then you don't know how to get rid of them, and you know you're not in their you're not indoctrinated into their culture, their
Tradition.
their tradition,
Mhm.
and it just can cause chaos. And that's what happened with me. I didn't know what I was doing, and
Mhm.
I loved them. They were like beautiful. Now they're on SoundCloud. They're like all over the place, and people are singing them, and I'm going, oh my god,
Bringing them in.
because I've even heard people singing them in concert, and I have a judgment. I'm just going to call it. I have a judgment on this one, and I feel really strongly about this because they're singing these songs, these puntos, and they don't know that the audience, they don't know who's sensitive and who's not. There was a time where if I would hear those, I would start incorporating and I had to leave. And I felt really bad for the other people that were there, because people could take things home with them. Because when we open these portals and the beings come in, other beings kind of ride that, sometimes they drive that wave in. Yeah. And so I think I want to be very clear about that.
Okay.
Be very careful. And if you're interested, find a teacher, work with the teacher on that. I'm not a teacher. I'm a student of Umbanda. That is a very delicate force, delicate tradition. I think it's very profound if that's something that calls to you. But find your teachers, find your gatekeeper, and be very, very mindful and stay in integrity.
So just, I have a couple questions, but if someone felt that they were interested and they felt that they were hitting this like next level of mediumship, could they email you, and could you refer them to a proper teacher that can support them? Okay. I just wanted, and we'll add that at the end too, but I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Yes.
And then I'm curious about these Orisha, right? Orishas, are they, so they're in service to Mother Earth, and are they bound to this or not physical, but they're almost like bound to the earth plane, right?
That's a good question. I don't live in the liminal space. Yeah. And so I'm not sure where they can travel to.
Because I feel like I've experienced before, and I was just sensing that they potentially are in service to her, and that there's like, they're bound, and they move and they ascend with her. There's like this.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can't say for definite because I don't live in that liminal space, but yeah, that makes sense. It's like I feel like I keep hearing protectors. Yeah. They're protectors of the earth.
Yeah.
And talk to me in 10 years and maybe I'll have more information on that.
I think in a year you'll have more information for
perhaps,
sure.
Yeah, perhaps. Things are moving really quickly right now, and I think for everyone that is willing to do the work, it's moving, it's accelerated big time. And so you're right. It could be in a year I can have a lot more information in that realm.
Yeah.
That's a good question for my teachers, but the teachers might have different perspectives on that too. We all have our own relationship with them.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to, like you said, to find the one that resonates with you and that you just, really connect with. I very much agree with that.
Yeah, and there's also people that do readings that will tell you who is, guarding your crown and who's next to you. Because like in that tradition, there's usually like 2. And they'll be like the one that guards your crown and the one that's next to you.
Do you think everybody has, well, I mean, we all have guides, so we have at least one to like however many guides, I guess.
Yeah. And well, my gatekeeper is not, he's has needed to be indoctrinated. He's not from the, I'll say like Umbanda. He's not from, he's come from other places. And that's another thing too. There's like a line that's called the Oriental line.
Mhm.
And I think that, and maybe even some Umbanda traditions, they call it something else. But that's the line that's like not from Brazil, you know, not African. They come
Mhm.
from other realms, other places. And so
Mhm.
mine is not. He's from the Oriental line.
Mhm. Interesting.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, so it's you're working in relationship with your gatekeeper or your guide
Yeah.
as you're stepping up the ladder and learning.
And yeah, and the gatekeeper, you know, they can be your guide, maybe not. Mine, we have a relationship. I will say
Uh-huh.
he's not my main guide. We have a relationship, and his job is to protect me.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I think it'll be different for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you're moving in this direct, I mean, you've stepped on this path. You are on the mediumship path. What are like the next steps for you as you're walking on it?
To continue doing my prayers, continue being in alignment with Creator and my mission, and to just get closer to that mission and what I'm here to do.
Mm-hmm.
I've come to a point where that's all I can do now.
Yeah.
Is my mission. And I get a little bit of pieces all the time. You know, every day I get a little bit more, maybe not every day, but every month or so. And there's a point where, and I don't know if this is for everybody, I think it may be, is there's a point of like no return. There was a point for me where I'll never forget it. I was looking at the stars and I said, I want to quit. The stars laughed at me and said, no.
Too bad.
Deal
with it.
You've already crossed over to the other side and there's no turning back. And I laughed and I said, oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah.
No circling back anymore. Because in my early 20s, and even I will say like in my 30s, until I left that relationship, I kept circling back, like kind of going like what I call the muggle world, like Harry Potter, like the normal people. I would go back to like trying to live that life, but it didn't work for me. And so I came to a point of no return where it's like, I can't go back, nor do I want to anymore, because I'm living in the service of Creator now. And it feels really good.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, it comes to a point like if you do go back, then there will be massive wake up calls to get you back on the path.
Yeah, I can't even go back anymore.
Yeah.
It's not even happening.
Yeah, that's why I always say that I'm walking on this fine line. Like it's like I'm not getting off the path anymore. Nope.
No, because we know.
Yeah.
When you've really been through the darkness, when you've really got deep into the darkness, and we're able to get out, it's like, for me, it's like there's no way I'm ever going back.
Yep.
Then I'll say I guess he can be my guide. Then he comes in, he's like, no, you're not going back. No, and he's pretty strong. He's the warrior spirit. And he's like, nope, not going back. Cannot, no way.
I'm curious, have you painted, because you're an artist, so have you drawn your gatekeeper or painted or?
Not him, but I actually, and I lost the painting. I painted, there's one coming that she's getting ready to come. And I painted her. I think it was about 10 years ago. And I painted her. And I wish I had the painting. I don't have it anymore, but maybe I will. We'll see. Maybe she'll change. But I did paint her. I didn't know what I was painting at the time. And she was African. She's African. Yeah.
Interesting.
She's from Africa. And she could be a mix. I don't know. We'll see as it develops.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to find out in the future. I'm just curious, we've talked a lot like within our circle about prophecy and, as the earth is, moving through this transition and as the ending is falling into the beginning and that there's going to be something is going to happen. What have your guides told you about how to prepare for the upcoming purging that will come from this?
This is a good question.
Mm-hmm.
The preparation I've really held on to, and I, you know, when I was in Hawaii, I lived off grid and I had all the water. It was great. I felt like I was prepared for everything that's coming. But now I'm living in the city again. I'm back in Los Angeles, the place of my home, and I'm the message is that I'm to do work here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing light work here, just being here, and the message I'm getting now is the work that we need to do is the inner work.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we're going to prepare, because as the ending is falling into the beginning, we can get caught up in all of it. We can get caught up, and I'll say this: the red, the blue,
Mm-hmm.
and then I recently just realized, and then there's the conspiracies.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, that's the triangle. Then we get ourselves in a triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all the lower spirits. If we can elevate our consciousness to a place where we understand what's going on, we're not spiritually bypassing it,
Mm-hmm.
but we see it as a purging to get to the next phase that we're in, realizing that this is what is needed to be done, then we're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
We just keep that love inside of us, keep that hope, not ignore, because that's also spiritual bypassing.
Mm-hmm.
Do what we can, find our mission. What is your mission? If your mission is to go out there and protest, well, then that's what your mission is. If your mission is to be in prayer and in service in that way, in prayer and hold the light for those around us, then that's what the mission is.
Mm-hmm.
Because light is infectious, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is darkness. So there's what people call light workers have to stay in the light, but really like truly stay in the light
Mm-hmm.
for all of those around them, because that's really important right now. We need that more than ever in the world. We need to be those light workers and really work on our judgment. We're all human.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be there. You know, I even talked about my own judgment early on, and it's judgment for the protocols, to really honor protocols, because there's a reason. It's not like, oh, that's a rule for you to follow because of whatever. Well, I can explain why.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe, you know, people that grew up in our times, it was like we were told to follow the rule, but not told why.
Right.
I'm offering a why.
Right.
And so to just be mindful, find our purpose and do that, and not judge anybody else's purpose. You know, some people are working in the community and keeping the light in the community. Some people are branching out into the World Wide Web. You know, some people are raising children, and that's our future.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all perfect, and it's all beautiful, and it's all important. So to be that light for whatever our mission is in this world.
Yeah, it's really hard not to judge others. It's a challenge. And I do agree with you that to not, you know, to be aware, but to not engage in everything that's going on. And work on yourself, you know, work on that inner self. Is there any message you would like to give to humanity? I mean, you gave a lot right there, but is there more that you would like to give to humanity right now?
I will say this, because this is really close to my heart, because there's people in my life that have really struggled, and now I have more of an understanding. The people on the street speaking to themselves, the people in psychosis, people on drugs, have love in your heart for them, because they need it more than anything. They can, in another world, be our teachers, be our guides, because there's the sensitive ones. that have had so much trauma, unhealed trauma from their lineage, they weren't able to do it. And maybe at some point they will be able to. At some point they will be able to find their way out of the darkness, because I truly believe that they are the sensitive beings. So, do what you can, help where you can, send them some love. Sometimes you can talk to them, sometimes you can't. They might be too much on the other side, but they're suffering. And just to have compassion for those people.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, thank you.
I always offer food. So instead of money, I give food to them.
I do that too.
Yeah.
I don't give them money either.
Yeah.
I give them food.
Yeah, the money will go to drugs, but at least food, they can eat something, So I always give them something. Yeah. So, and they like it. They will eat it.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of homeless, transient people who are addicted to drugs, like on the streets, that are, and it's a huge challenge, and it's becoming more apparent. And I don't know how to solve the problem. I don't think anybody really knows how to solve it, because like you said, there's so much trauma that's embedded in there, and they are making a choice as well. So it's a combination of trauma and choice.
Absolutely.
And yeah, but I believe, yes, having compassion and sending love and light is a step. So that's good. We would like to know, I'm sure, people who are listening, like if they're having any like experiences and they need guidance, where can we find you and the work you're doing and all that stuff?
You can find me on lylasofia.com. It's LYLASOFIA.com.
Okay, and they can email, and someone can email you, and okay.
Yeah, there's a way on the website where you can email me, and then I'll get in touch with you.
Okay, and just to be sure, the work you're doing, you're working with teenagers right now.
I'm working with all people.
All people.
I mean, my heart is with the teenagers always. But I will work. Yeah, I work with any age. In my email, I could just leave this: lylasofia.healingarts@gmail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it sounds like, you are doing amazing work, and I'm super excited to find out as you progress on this path, like what comes forth. And I hope to have you on soon, like in the next 6 months, to see, check in and see where you are and all the stuff that you've learned. And I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. It's great to be here, and I look forward to more.
Thank you so much.